I had the opportunity to interview Jordan from Retina Theatre Company, and I actually learned so much in this conversation. Like, you don't often hear about all of the different stages and different things a theatre company goes through, from choosing which play they're going to turn into a show, to creating and developing that show, to then performing it at various different festivals and events, and what the whole experience is like. So I learned so much, and I just gained so much from this conversation. So I hope you enjoy. So today I'm joined by Rendered Retina's Jordan, and you adapt Shakespeare plays Timon of Athens and King John, is it?
Yeah, King John.
And also you've done a physical theatre play called Form, and I want to ask you about all of that, because I just think you create some really interesting work in a very unique style as well. So I'm actually such a big fan as well. So I'm so excited to talk to you. So I first want to talk to you about Timon of Athens, because that's quite intimidating to take on a whole Shakespeare play. So what's the first thing you do when you decide that you want to do a specific play?
Well, I suppose it's that very question. Is the first step is deciding which play to do. You know, Shakespeare's got a huge catalogue of works, some more popular than others. And when it comes to Timon of Athens, the kind of story behind that was that somebody basically from the local theatre where we were in at university, he went to us, oh, you know, there's this Shakespeare play. Don't worry, you won't have heard of it. It's called Timon of Athens. And we were like, how dare you assume that we don't know Timon of Athens? Of course we didn't, because who does, right? But because of that, we went, we'll show you. We're gonna make a show of this play that you think we haven't heard of. So that maybe not the best reason, but we chose Timon of Athens kind of out of spite, I guess. So that's the first step about what is the play that you want to do, and who's it going to be for, and what is it going to be for. Both Timon of Athens and King John, they have specific reasons, because a lot of people will be like, oh, why are those ones? And that's kind of the point of why we've done them. Once we'd chosen to do the play, it was like, okay, well, we have to read it. And so the first, few weeks were literally just kind of reading it and rereading it, and reading kind of like articles and journals about the play itself, trying to understand what it actually was, and why is it that the play's not very well known. And in some ways, what we kind of came back to is that there's this big, what we found in the research was that there's a kind of big debate about whether Timon of Athens is a comedy or a tragedy. For those that don't know the story of Timon of Athens, very quickly, there's a guy named Timon, and he's got lots of money, and he's very wealthy, and he's got loads of friends, and he basically gives all of his money away to his friends, and like hosts all these big lavish parties and big dinner banquets and stuff, and invites everybody there. And he's always helping out people that are in need, giving them money. And essentially it gets to the point where he's so generous that he gives all of his money away. And he basically accrues a lot of debts. And so when the people come to collect those debts, he goes, oh, it's okay, I'll ask my friends for some help. I'll ask my friends to give me some financial aid. And basically all of his friends turn around and say, no, like we told you, we warned you that you were giving all your money away. So the play ends quite tragically with him dying, in a very nondescript, mysterious kind of way. But he basically runs away from Athens, and dies. And so it's this thing of people aren't sure, because there are some really funny moments in it, and there's some very witty dialogue, as you'd expect from Shakespeare. But of course, then you have the tragedy of this man that's given away everything, and ends up dying. But because of that, we were inspired. It was like, well, why don't we make the play like that? Why don't we do it in both styles? And kind of because it naturally fits into both of them, why don't we try and put that on the stage? So the kind of first half is very much you know, fun and energetic and silly and like funny. And then the second half really does kind of then delve into that, the kind of darkness and the darker side. Also, the whole of the final act of Timon of Athens in the actual play is literally just him kind of moaning, which we kind of were like, we can cut that down. But it was, you know, Shakespeare's plays, you know, they would have been hours long, 3+ hours each for each play. And obviously our version of Timon of Athens is only an hour long. So it was a big task of being like, okay, we've got our idea for the play, how we kind of want to show it. Now we need to make it fit into that time that we need it to be. So kind of cutting out all those scenes and characters that aren't needed. Again, pretty much the whole of that last act, we kind of just went, we can cut that down into like a song, basically. So that, you know, that was kind of the idea, and that was the real kind of starting blocks for it. And then, you know, it just comes to how you're going to show the play. And we are quite naturally, Tom and Alex, who are the co-artistic directors, we've been friends for a long time, and it was very much about us just kind of being idiots. And when you're making like comedy and stuff like that, or fun kind of shows, it's very much, you have to kind of just have fun with it, and that's kind of what we did, and that was the starting point. All three of us were trained in, and at the time we specialized in commedia dell'arte, so we were very used to that kind of big, energetic, you know, larger than life physical theater. So that just felt natural as a natural choice. And, you know, we, instead of using the commedia dell'arte masks, we used hats as kind of token costumes to differentiate between the different characters. There's a lot of different characters and only 3 of us, so that kind of natural chaos that comes from trying to find the right character. And obviously scenes aren't just 3 people standing and talking. You've got scenes with, you know, 5, 6 characters all talking, and that kind of chaos of trying to run and find the hat for the right character to say the right line at the right time, just kind of came part of the game of the play. And it just kind of quite naturally built itself, in a sense, once we kind of had those starting points. And then, you know, we wrote some fun songs to go inside of it. And that was pretty much Timon of Athens.
So with the music and the comedy, is it just because you did commedia and because you were a band previously? You might not want me to say, but you were a band originally. Is that how you ended up with that style, or was that a choice for the style of play it is?
Great question. I think I don't even necessarily think it was like a real like choice in a sense. I think it just quite naturally happened. Like you said, yes, we were a band. We've known each other back since, you know, year 7 in secondary school. So we've known each other for a long time, and we were always kind of playing music together and stuff. And then, yeah, but because we trained in commedia, it was like, you know, that felt very natural. And then we just thought, let's do it. There wasn't like a real like sit down and be like, should we do this, and should we add songs? How would that fit in thematically? It wasn't like that. It was like, we want the play to be enjoyable, but more importantly so, understandable, right? The biggest thing, you ask anybody, what's the biggest barrier with Shakespeare? And everybody will say, oh, it's the language. I don't understand. And, you know, from school kids to, you know, grown adults, that, you know, everybody has that's the biggest kind of barrier. So, and, you know, the classic thing is that, you know, Shakespeare wasn't meant to be read, it was meant to be seen. So of course you don't understand it if you're just reading off of the page. That's perfectly natural. So the thing is with Timon of Athens is, for us, you know, if we can get across this story that nobody's heard before and get people to understand it, then that's tick in our box. You know, that's our mission complete. So I think the songs were kind of, you know, to help reach that goal. It was, you know, it's boring just to no, actually I shouldn't say it. I was going to say it's always listen to Shakespeare, but it's not, of course. There are big Shakespeare fans out there that love the text, and it is, and he was a poet and very, very intelligent, very clever with how he writes. But also we're in centuries later, and we don't necessarily have the people have got phones and TikTok and YouTube and all that kind of visual stuff, games and films, and it's very visual now, as it was, kind of as it was back then, but now it's kind of taken a different form. So you want people to stay engaged, and kind of the songs were part of that. How can you, if you write a catchy song that people go away humming at the afterwards, then that's brilliant. People remember your music, and that's kind of where the opening song, gather round one and all, it's very much this like, come on everybody, we're gonna have some fun together. And we get people talking to us after the show and be like, oh, that's stuck in my head, and we're like, great, brilliant. So yeah, it was quite a natural thing, just because of that was something that we did together anyway.
Yeah, I think that's quite good, because the songs are really funny. And I do get what you mean, because when I was going to watch your show, I was on the Wikipedia page and I was so confused. I was, what's this Timon of Athens? Who is he? And I was reading the Wikipedia page and it wasn't helping. And I was like, I'm going to have an hour of being really confused. And I think the songs made me understand it. Like, I wasn't confused. Otherwise I wouldn't have brought you to interview you if I was like, I don't understand the word you're on about.
No, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
So how do you actually approach the language of Shakespeare then? Like, I know some people look at the emotion behind it and try and access that. Some people look at that alliteration. What do you do to approach the language?
Great question. It kind of depends on the play and what it's for. With Timon, because again our sole focus is to get people to understand the story and to have a good time experiencing the story, it was very much about taking out the fluff that wasn't needed. As we said, Shakespeare was a poet, and so it was all these beautiful descriptions, poetic and beautiful kind of ways with words. And I'm sure there's a lot of diehard Shakespeare fans out there. It'll be like, oh, you taking out that line ruined the iambic pentameter of that. And
yeah,
yes, it absolutely did. But that was one of those points in the process where you have to weigh it up and go, well, what do we want it to be? And if we take out take out that iambic pentameter, will that help people to kind of understand the flow of it a little bit more? Yeah. So, in some ways, we kind of butcher the text. To some people's horror, we do butcher it in a way, cutting out things that we're like, that line that doesn't mean anything. That's just reiterating this other line in more words. Take it out. That was the process for Timon, but we'd actually actually, it's something that we haven't got online at the moment, is we did Macbeth, or we did like a schools tour of Macbeth last year, and that was a very kind of different approach, because the point of Macbeth was to take into schools and get students that are studying the text to kind of to help understand their learning of it, so they can write it in their exams. Now, because of that, and because they're writing in exams, it's a very different approach to the text. It's very much about, we need to make sure that the text is sacred here, because they'll be expected to know these, to pick out these quotes, these extracts from the text, and write entire things about them. So a lot of Macbeth was about preserving the text, but in a similar way also trying to think, okay, but what can we take out? So there's a big balancing act when it comes to dealing with Shakespeare's text. And again, unfortunately, you're going to have to cut chunks of it out, because we've only got an hour to do a show that would have been 3+ hours long. So you know, you have to cut things out. And again, you know, some people might not like that, but maybe then the show isn't made for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know? So it's hard, and it takes a lot of time in the actual kind of creating process. That, you know, the text is your starting block. So it takes a lot of time to cut down and go through, and you know, you might cut it down and then read it through and be like, no, it's still too long, or it's still too clunky, it still doesn't flow.
Yeah.
And then you're still just chipping away, and sometimes you'll be like, oh no, I think we need to add that back in because now it doesn't sit right. And you're always kind of negotiating with the text. But also we kind of have a bit of in our style of when we do the Shakespeare's, we have those kinds of scene transitions where we kind of explain what happened in the last scene and what's going to happen in the next. So we can kind of cheat in a lot of ways, where we can kind of take out a big chunk of a scene and be like, we'll just explain that in a transition, so that we can cut the time down and people don't get lost in it. But yeah, it takes a lot of time, but it is a big balancing act. Yeah.
Did you do Macbeth with just 3 of you then?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I've tried to do that before when I was like 12 in year 8, and it didn't work. There's like 40 characters.
Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, we did have to cut characters out, and you know, some of the more like, you know, lesser characters, like, you know, Shakespeare's always got the ones that's like man 1, gentlewoman 2, or like messenger. Some of them, you know, some of them we kind of have to go, oh, we're just gonna make you one character so that you can come in and out. Again, maybe the Shakespeare purists might hate us for that. But you know, we have to also negotiate what's actually possible for us to do. So, you know, we can multi-role. You know, we can multi-role 18 characters between the 3 of us. We can do that, but any more, and you know, it really just becomes chaotic. It becomes really, really.
I mean, 18's still a lot, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yes, and also trying to remember who comes in at what scene and who says which thing. But funnily enough, that kind of just comes with like muscle memory. We've done Timon so many times now that it is very much like you finish a scene, you throw the hat that you're wearing down, and your body just kind of takes you, and like it just kind of turns, and you're like, I don't know why I'm going this way, and then you'll see exactly the hat that you need there, and you're like, oh yeah. But that's kind of like it becomes infused in muscle memory. But I suppose that, you know, I spoke earlier about the kind of the chaos kind of in the fun and the chaos in trying to find those hats and balance all those characters. But maybe to spoil the illusion a little bit, it might look extremely chaotic from the audience perspective, but actually, but the fact that I'm able to throw that hat down and know exactly where to go to get the next hat, there is actually like, there isn't a very strict specific order for it. That, you know, with Timon and with the Shakespeare's, that we can play around with that a little bit. We have had it where like in the middle of a show, one of the hats got like kicked underneath the box. We couldn't find it, and we were literally just running around trying to find this missing hat. And that is fun, and that's part of the fun.
I guess
being able to do it, and it's fun for the audience to see, because they know full well like something's gone wrong, and you're kind of letting them in on that joke and on that fun. But going back to form for a second, which is very, I'd say that maybe the opposite, which is extremely strict on where everything needs to go. Form has a lot of props. It's set in an office, so there's lots of stationery. It also features 20,000 scrunched up paper balls. So things have to be exactly in the place that they need to be for the right time. So that's the kind of like duality of it. Like you've got to, it's either you just let it be part of it and let that chaos be part of it, or it has to be, this needs to be exactly there, so I have it for the scene where I need it. But yeah, it's fun, but it's a challenge.
It sounds it. So I want to move on to form now, and you kind of started doing that for me, so it's quite a nice transition into it. I have seen, did you say you did a full week R&D of it?
yeah, so that was funded by the Arts Council. So we got funded for that those 4 weeks, and that was kind of just to make the first draft
Yeah.
of the show, basically. And form took, I suppose, actually did timing as well. The work's never finished. And as an artist, as a creative, you're always wanting to tweak things and add new things and change bits. And form very much went through that process. The original idea for form and the original kind of core of it is still there, as maintained throughout the years that we've been doing it. But entire scenes, entire sequences are completely brand new. From if you saw it 3 years ago and we did it today, you'd be like, oh, what's that? That's a new bit.
Oh.
So I think as an artist, you kind of have, you're always wanting to do stuff, but you also have to know, okay, I think it's time now. Like we could carry on working on form and making new bits, but it's got to the point where it's now like, no, do you know what, we're happy with where it's at.
Yeah.
And we're content, and so we'll carry on. Form was it was a long time in the making, because the first, we did that R&D, and the first version of it was okay. And that's okay, and that's fine, and that's all it needed to be at the end of a 4-week R&D. Really, that's not much time at all. But from there, once you've got something, then it became about showing it to people. At the end of the R&D, and it was we had invited audiences come to watch it and give us feedback on what they thought about it, so that then we could continue that journey of development. So it takes a lot of time to make a show. As great as it would be just to be like, oh yeah, we went into a rehearsal room for 4 weeks, came out, and it was this perfect thing that was ready. That would be lovely, but it doesn't happen like that. And it shouldn't happen like that. I don't think, personally.
Yeah.
I think that you have to have time away from what you've made, so you can kind of think about it. Because sometimes we'll, for an example, we'll write a song from one of the Shakespeare plays. We'll be together, we'll spend a whole rehearsal like being like, yeah, we're going to write this song, and we write it, and we're like, yeah, happy with it. And then we go away and we like listen back to the recording of it, and we go, oh, actually, no, I don't like it at all. Like that like 2 lines there. And then you kind of come back and you go, yeah, no, actually, I didn't like that. And that's kind of all part of the creative process. It's not just the time in the space that, it's the time away from it. In the same way that, I don't know, if you cook, like if you cook a steak, you should you cook meat, you should cook it and then let it rest, because then it needs to relax and, reabsorb the juices and stuff like that.
I've never cooked a steak before.
Yeah, I mean, I like food. That's where I'm coming from. But it's that exact same thing. You have to let things just kind of settle and rest. And once you've come out from you've let that all those endorphins, all that like happiness and like the joy and like, oh yeah, this song stuck in my head, like I really like it. And once you let that kind of calm, relax, then you might have a different perspective of it coming back, which only means that you're going to be making better work, because you're giving yourself time to actually think about things and understand if they work or not.
So you say that it changed a lot. What was the actual start idea for it? Because it's a very unique idea. And also 20,000 paper balls. Like, why 20,000? That's like a big task to take on, and clearing that up seems quite hard.
Yes. Oh gosh. Okay. So the original idea for form, and this kind of comes back to a lot of the way that we approach making new work. We kind of have this idea of how we want it to look first. We kind of start with the visuals. We're very kind of rendered Retina. We're a lot about the visuals. So form started off with this idea that was just like, guys, I have this image, and it's us, and we're like wearing suits, and we're like in an office, and then the same space with like loads of paper thrown around in it. And And then we had those two images. It was like this start, nice, clean, pristine office, and then the other end of the show that was going to be with all the paper everywhere and like everything a mess. And then when we kind of had those ideas, we were like, oh yeah, that's a cool image. Now, how do we get from one to the other?
Yeah.
And so that was the starting point. It was purely like, I just had this idea. I don't know what it means. I don't know how you get there. I don't know anything about why. And that's just kind of what I thought. And we were like, yeah, that's cool. I like the image of that. All right, fine. Let's think about that. And then, then it becomes when you start to like look at the themes that you would, that would come out from looking at an office. Like I say, as an audience member, you come in with your expectations, right? Or not even just for what the show is, but like when you're presented with something on the stage, we have this kind of shared idea of what that is. If you show an office on the stage, people go, oh yeah, it's an office. I know what an office is and I know what an office does. And for everybody that works in an office, or most people that work in offices, they might go, yeah, there's, it can be kind of boring, it can be kind of repetitive, it can be kind of monotonous. And that became the core of what the show's about. And if we go, well, if that's the expectation in the space, so we start off with an image, and in that image we have an idea of how the space looks, or what the space that this show is held in. And then we're going, well, we need to then play with those ideas. And so if people are expecting monotony and routine, what's the opposite of that? What does that kind of lead on to? And then Form, became about a show about escaping those things, escaping monotony and escaping the routine of the everyday. And the question became, okay, well, how do you escape that? Well, we escape it through daydreaming and our imaginations. So the idea of boredom and running away from that boredom by using everything that you would find in that office space as a vehicle for escape, that's then kind of how we ended up getting to that end image with all the paper thrown everywhere, because through the power of imagination, that paper becomes it becomes an ocean, it becomes a snowy tundra. There's a whole journey that the main character kind of goes on through lots of different worlds and lots of different environments to get to that end image of back in the office with the chaos of everything that's happened in the previous hour. And then those were the two images. So that's how it started. Image, and then connect the two, basically.
That's so interesting. Like, it's wild, isn't it? Like, as a show, it's very impressive, and it's a lot to learn as well, because there's no words, so it's very precise choreography.
Actually, you know what, it didn't even cross my mind, but you're right, it's completely non-verbal. And the only kind of the way of communicating between the characters is purely through your physical body. And so whereas it throws up a very different challenge from what are the right words that my character should say, to the complete opposite end of like, well, how do I express, or how do we express these kind of deep kind of thoughts and emotions and feelings without saying it, right? And that throws up its own set of challenges. And because of that, we use mime, we use clowning, we use the object theater and object manipulation kind of to communicate, not only between the characters but with the audience as well. How it becomes very difficult but exciting, thinking about how you can show those complex thoughts and ideas through just stuff and movement, basically.
I think so. I think it makes it more exciting to watch as well, because so much theatre is just like a monologue or something, and not much is visually going on. But I think that's what makes Form so different and so exciting.
It's exciting because as well, like, sorry not to cut you off, but
It's
you
all
know,
right.
it also gives space for people to kind of come away with their own interpretations of
Yeah.
it. You know, we have an idea of what the show kind of means, but when you watch it, you might not come out with that idea. You might, you know, you're not in our
Yeah.
heads. So that's kind of the beauty of it, that it's not like you can't come out of that show and be like, no, you were wrong about what it was about. It was definitely about
Yeah.
this. And that's exciting for an audience member that leaves and they go, oh, I thought it meant this, and I thought it meant that. And also for some people, the show affects differently. You know, for, you know, creatives like, you know, like us, we, you know, you come out of it and you appreciate the art form, you appreciate the visuals and the skill and the technique. But then as, you know, a normal, I say a normal person, and not a creative, and you know, we had somebody that was kind of he worked for the Times newspaper, who he watched it just out, you know, off his own back, just came and watched the show, and he said afterwards that he was like, it really resonated with me. He was like, that's my life. He's like, what you put on the stage, that's my life, and that's how I feel about things. So it's a very kind of interesting thing about how different people react to it and how it resonates with different people. And that's a really kind of beautiful thing, you know, as an artist, to allow the people that are coming to watch your work to come away with all these different ideas and all these different, you know, conversations.
That's really nice that it brings something up different in different people. But when you've developed these shows, how do you decide where you're going to perform it? Because it's hard to know where you can take your own work.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's and to be honest with you, that's probably the most difficult part. Um that's where you're stepping away from the kind of creative side and you're then looking at it as like a business. And my advice for, you know, my advice for anybody that is, you know, kind of making their own work and looking to get it somewhere is, one, you literally just have to keep looking and just seeing what's out there and just keep applying for different things. For us, it was we were applying for, you know, various like fringe festivals. We'd asked our old university if we could go back and do a showing there for their students. You know, it was free. It meant that we could you know, test out the show, but also they were getting a free show to watch. So you can kind of create those opportunities for yourself just by looking and by just keep on applying. However, there does come a point where you, as a creative, you either make that decision where you're going to be, no, I'm going to be the creative, I'm going to be the artist, and I'm going to be the business head, the producer, the, you know, the technician, and all of that stuff around it, which, you know, some people do and they're amazing at doing that. For us, we know that we can't do that all by ourselves, you know, so we have, you know, we have people that we kind of do get on board to help us out. We had, for form, because it's non-verbal, there's it's all just a soundtrack, a backing track. So we had a composer in the space with us making the music to go along with the scenes as we were doing it. You know, we're not that technically skilled to, you know, we can write some songs on a guitar and, you know, some catchy lyrics, but when it's that kind of thing, is very different skill. In the same way that, you know, writing applications for funding and stuff like that, you have people that write funding bids, you have producers that are, you know, contacting venues and like looking to get you in. So that's the two ways you can do it. You can either try and do, like, you know, learn to do it all yourself, which is, you know, very strong and very bold, but at the same time you have the other option that's like, well, let me leave that to somebody else, which lets me do the part that I want to do. But starting out, the advice is just keep looking and just keep trying.
So now you've taken these plays around different places, and I know you've got other plays as well. So what's next for Rendered Retina? What's next for you, your goals, your career?
So right now, what we've kind of focused on the last year and a bit is more schools and education. Where we're based is Thurrock in Essex, which is classed as a culturally deprived area. So, you know, to us, it was kind of this thing of like, well, what good is it if we're, you know, out and we're touring to different countries with our work, but we're not, you know, enhancing the people that are where we're based or where we're from. So it's all well and good to be like, oh, you know, look at that company, they're doing some amazing things and they're all the way over there doing stuff. But for, you know, somebody that's in school, and, you know, I've definitely felt it when I was in school, it was like, okay, yeah, but how do I get there? How do I get to there? And for us, it was very much about taking those things that we've learned over our time of touring and, you know, doing all that kind of stuff and going, okay, well, let's bring it back, and let's bring it back to where it started, so we can actually teach people how to do it, and, you know, and actually get people from a young age interested and interested in the arts and wanting to be part of it. And then what we're looking to do as well is to start making another physical theatre show that's more contemporary. That's what we're looking to do. The difficulty with that is that we know from our experience with form is that takes a long time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resources, a lot of effort to be able to do that. And so that's our plan, and we want to get started. However, obviously, you might not hear about that for a little while before, you know, before it's ready to, you know, start being put out there into the world. But that's the hope. That's in the next couple of years, the plan.
So you're just gonna get into a room together and start trying stuff? Is that how it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, we do, you know, kind of throw around ideas here and there about like, oh, you know, what if I had, again, same thing. Oh, I have this image of this this dump, like, oh yeah, like set in a dump. I don't know what it means, and or, you know, or like, oh, this one's set in a, I don't know, in a library. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But we do throw around those kinds of ideas, and we're kind of like, okay, yeah, that's cool. That could lead to something. But again, yeah, it is just once you've set the time aside just to go and do it, and that's not a very good help for anybody who wants to just go and make work. But once you're in the space, a lot of things do just kind of happen naturally, and you'll find it, really.
Yeah, I think that's better advice than you think, because a lot of people will just put it off. So it's a good idea to send people to go try.
And we do get that as a lot of like questions from like the kids in the schools. Like, they're very much like, what we'll say to them, you know, we're based on playfulness, on playing in our rehearsals and just trying out random things. And obviously, you know, the kids are like, but how? But what does that mean? Like, but how do you actually do it? And it's quite a difficult thing to, as artists, you know, well, to get across to young people, but also for us to learn how to do that as well and be able to do that ourselves. You know, some creatives want to go in with a full, like, this is the scene, like, these are the scene orders, and this is exactly what characters are going to be in it, and these are all of these things, and they want it ready so that then they go into a space and then they build around it. We're on the other side. You know, it's very much like we start with a clean slate and we just mess about. And maybe one of the best examples is that in form, there's a sequence, you know, the old, like, when you're behind like a wall and you pretend you're going downstairs, and there's a whole sequence in form that's that, basically literally just pretending to go up and downstairs. And, you know, when people ask us, oh, how did you come up with that, like that whole sequence? We were like, oh, we were literally on a lunch break at one of our rehearsals, and the boxes were laid out like kind of like and we were like, hey guys, and that was it. And then we were just literally just messing about, and then we were like, hey, this could be something. And so then we just carried on messing around with that idea and just playing around. But maybe what was so fun about that as an idea is that it wasn't done for the show. We didn't like start doing it like, oh yes, I have this idea of like, we have this whole gag about going up and downstairs. It just happened organically when we were messing about and having fun and we were laughing about it, and then we were like, hang on, this
Yeah.
should be in the show. So yeah, it's difficult, and you know, even sometimes, you know, we have blocks, you know, we do get blocks that's like, you know, I don't know what now, like we're a bit stuck, and that's part of the process. You know, it's about learning how to deal with those blocks, and that those blocks are okay. Generally a block is like, you know, if that means there's an obstacle,
Yeah.
that means that there's something on the other side of it that's worth getting to, and you just got to figure out how to get there, right? You just, okay, what we're doing right now isn't leading us to where we want it to be, so let's try this way, let's go around the wall, let's jump over the wall, let's dig a tunnel underneath. Like, all of these kind of crazy ideas might just lead you to where you want to be, or it might lead you somewhere completely different that is 10 times better, or it could lead you somewhere and you go, no, this is rubbish. As well, you know, we have shows worth of material that we haven't included,
Yeah.
and that's perfectly fine. And you know, a lot of and again, as artists, that's definitely something where you have to go, I just need to let go of this, because this is holding me back. Like, you know, I need to, I like this, but it's not helping the show, it's not delivering the message it needs to deliver, it's not doing the thing it needs to do. So you as an artist, you need to be able to go, okay, no, I'm going to put it to the side, and maybe I'll come back to it later. Maybe it will fit somewhere in, and that will be the missing piece for this show. Maybe it will be something else for a completely different show. You just never know, right? So I suppose another piece of advice off the back of that is just record everything that you do. Just record everything, because one day, who knows, months down the line, you might go, I did that thing randomly, maybe that will work. And then, you know,
That's a good idea, because I guess then you've got a lot of options for if you're stuck on something, a lot to go back to. So what advice would you give for people who are watching this and wanting to be you and do what you're doing?
so the advice is, you know, just do it. Just keep doing it because you want to do it, and it will work out. And you know, obviously, you know, we're not, you know, we all live in the real world, we have bills to pay, and you know, we have other responsibilities in life that are beyond, you know, us wanting to be performers and being on the stage or being creative. And sometimes I get, you know, young people come to me of like, oh, you know, but I want to be an actor, or I want to do this. And my advice is always, that's brilliant, and keep working towards that, and keep trying. Even if, you know, even if you get rejected a few times, that will only lead you to the right place. But keep trying. But also, there's absolutely nothing wrong with working another random job in the meantime. The classic, you know, stereotype is that, you know, all wannabe actors or budding actors are work in hospitality. They're waiting staff, they're, you know, serving tables and stuff like that. I did that, but in that environment, I actually got the best advice I ever received, from the operations manager. Didn't work in the arts at all, but we were having a conversation about, like, I was like, oh, this customer really annoyed me because they were very rude and blah blah blah, and I was really letting it affect me. And he was like, don't worry about it. And he said, the only reason any of us work, the only reason any of us have jobs, is to allow us to pursue our passions. It's to be able to pursue the things that we want to do. And suddenly it all just clicked in my head, and I went, you're right. Like, why am I letting this person that was a bit rude to me ruin my day? I'm here, and I'm here so I can pay my bills, and I can afford to be able to do the things that I want to do, where I want to be creative and I want to make work and all that kind of stuff. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Work the job, you know, we have the responsibilities, pay your bills, and they will allow you the space to be able to do the things that you want to do. So just keep on trying.
That's some really good advice, just for life, I think. And the final thing I want to say, is there anything you want to promote, places where people can find your work? I've done my research for this, but I want to know where you want me to direct people Because otherwise you might be like, oh no, don't send them there.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, look, you can find us on all the social medias. On Instagram, we're Rendered Retina. You'll find us on Twitter as Retina Theatre, and you'll find us on Facebook, if you still use Facebook, as Rendered Retina Theatre Company. We're on all of those. You can always contact us. So please, get in touch.
Well, thank you so much for this. It was nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Lottie.
So I'd like to say thank you so much to Rendered Retina, and especially to Jordan for taking the time to do this. I actually learned so much, and it was such an interesting conversation to have. And if anyone has any questions or anything else they'd like to say, then please leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you, hear what you've got to say. And I actually have quite a few more interviews coming up soon, so please stay tuned, and thank you for watching. Bye!